Welcome to Becoming Spiritual, a podcast about the magic that surrounds us and has always been a part of us. I'm your host, Heather Dolan, a passionate seeker dedicated to bringing together beautiful humans who are doing amazing things in this world. Together, we will explore healing modalities and practical spiritual practices that can enrich your everyday life. We will also hear stories of awakenings, many from people in the corporate world who have broken out of the spiritual closet. Wherever you are in your journey, know you have found a community of open-hearted individuals committed to making themselves and our world a better place. Welcome home. Welcome back to Becoming Spiritual. Today is part 2 of my Explant journey and story, where I am in the interviewee's seat again, and Natalie is helping me to share some more practical and grounded information around the whys of not only why I chose to have my explant surgery, but why a lot of women end up moving towards this decision as well. So in this episode, we're going to be diving into breast implant illness, the symptoms, what I experienced, what I've learned other women can experience, as well as some things that I wish I would have known ahead of getting my surgery. And while neither one of us are medical professionals, this is not meant to help someone diagnose or supersede any medical information that you might have. Please, please, please seek out medical professionals to talk about any health situations, symptoms that you're having. That's really important. But at the same time, we wanted to provide a lot of information that I discovered on my journey that was really helpful, and I hope will empower you. If anything, it might even give you the ability to strengthen your resolve to actually seek out a medical professional to have a conversation. So with that, let's jump into part 2. But also, if you didn't listen to part 1, that's okay. This certainly can be a standalone episode. You won't have as much context where I'm sharing about my story. But certainly, I would encourage you to go back and listen to the first part of the episode series, since it is a 2-parter. So we hope you enjoy the episode. We hope you feel really empowered when you leave here, or at least have you feeling like you've got a lot more information, you're armed with more information, and you can at least maybe take some time to think about your own situation or someone that you might know in your life. And certainly if there's someone in your life that you know might be struggling with some health issues and they have breast implants, if there's a way for you to share this with them, I encourage that. But also know that some people might not be ready to hear this information either. I think it's an incredibly personal decision to get implants removed. And so also know that some people just might not be there yet, but hopefully the information presented comes through in a very loving way, which is how Natalie and I meant for it to be. So thank you. And let's go into the episode.
So Heather, I think it's really important to discuss breast implant illness, what it is, what the symptoms are, and what your personal experience was and is with BII, as it's commonly known, and also what you learned about it from being in contact with so many other people through the online communities, through the doctors you consulted with, and all the other research you did. What is breast implant illness?
Good question. What's really interesting about breast implant illness is that it's technically not formally recognized as a diagnosis or a medical condition, at least by the FDA in the United States. So it's something that reminds me, if you remember back in the day, 25 plus years ago, IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, was not like an actual thing. They would say that's a garbage can diagnosis is literally what they used. Doctors throw you into, you have IBS if they don't know what's going on, and they couldn't categorize it. Now, of course, it is an actual recognized medical term. It's a diagnosis. There are treatments and different things you can do. So it's interesting because I feel like BII kind of falls into that bucket right now, where it's kind of similar, where it's not an actually recognized medical diagnosis. However, a lot of surgeons and certainly people who have gone through this experience realize like this is absolutely a thing. So I just want to share that.
Yeah, and can I butt in for a second here too? Because there's so
Yeah.
many chronic conditions that have had that treatment from the Western medical system for so long. I'm thinking of chronic fatigue syndrome and
for sure.
a lot of pain issues that people have as well that are from an unexplained source, that it's so often you'll go to your regular, as we call them, GPs, general practitioners in Australia, which might be your family physician in the US, and you talk to them about this. a lot of women's health issues as well. You'll talk to them about what you're experiencing in your body and it's kind of shrugged off. You're often not taken seriously, that you're making it up or that you don't have the other symptoms of. So there's nothing wrong with you. Yeah. Does that ring true?
Yeah, for sure. And I think you're actually gaslit, really, of just, no, it can't be this, or stop looking on the internet. You don't know what you're talking about. And, there's truth on both sides. Like, I appreciate the doctor's struggles of people coming in and self-diagnosing themselves before they've even talked to the doctor about a symptom. So we know you can go down that rabbit hole, but also there's really valuable information in sharing our experiences. And I don't remember if I mentioned it, but I did ask my surgeon about it when I got the second set of implants, and he just blew it off and was like, well, I've talked to some other surgeons and some of my colleagues, and we see no evidence of it. They're in the game of, putting in implants. So of course they're not going to spend time on something that's their bread and butter to possibly disrupt that revenue flow, unfortunately. So
yeah, totally. And I think this is why advocacy for yourself is so important, because I think many women listening to this, and men too, but especially women, they haven't felt empowered to speak up in that power dynamic with a doctor. And
for sure,
this is why knowledge and information is so important, because knowledge is power, and it's the power you need to actually advocate for yourself with a doctor who might be telling you, no, don't worry about it. It's nothing to worry about. That's not what you have. So let's share this knowledge.
Yeah. So basically, breast implant illness is looked at as an autoimmune response to the implant and the heavy metal toxicity. So the heavy metals are heavy metals in the materials that make up the implant. And so it's our body's response. And so what it does is breast implants actually compromise your immune system. And that allows viruses to cause symptoms and other conditions to strengthen. So it's basically they're a foreign object put into our bodies, especially deep into our muscles, into our chest cavity. Our body is like in fight or flight all of a sudden. So it is starting to attack them because it's trying to do its job and thinking there's a foreign object. I've got to protect the body. And so while it's doing that, it's compromising your immune system, that maybe there are other things that are going on in your body. Maybe you get exposed to something and then all of a sudden that's able to flare up more. And then that causes other issues. And it also can trigger autoimmune disorders. So like you were talking about, like chronic fatigue syndrome or IBS, like all of a sudden these things get worse and you think, oh, well, it's just my IBS flaring up. Well, why is that happening? Chances are, or for a lot of women that I've found, and I think I was definitely one of them, the implants are a trigger to that. It is kind of like lighting it on fire where, okay, wow, I might already have this issue, but because my body is busy fighting these things that are now in my body, it's not able to help maybe fend off some other things.
This is really important. So if you're already someone who's prone to autoimmune issues, then you should take the implant process really seriously, because your body can have an extreme reaction, right?
Yeah.
And our bodies, even with completely organic human organ transplants that are life-saving for so many people, there's a risk of our bodies rejecting them. You've got to take immune suppressants and stuff like that.
Yeah, anti-rejection medications, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so if we're thinking about something that's a completely foreign object, that if you can talk about these implants, what are they made of? Is this like a plastic outer? I know we talk about saline or silicon, but what is it that makes these objects so foreign to our bodies and our bodies to commonly have such an intense response?
Yeah. So there are 4 types of implants. So saline, silicone gel, structured saline, and cohesive gel, which is called the gummy bear. That's kind of the quote unquote in parentheses. That's the kind that I had. So saline is filled with salt water. So I think a lot of people are under the impression, oh, it's just salt water. It's natural to my body. So that was kind of how I think after the 80s, with a lot of lawsuits and issues with cancer, with the silicone and silicone leaking into their body because it's silicone, women were kind of told, oh, saline, it's safe. It's just salt water. So if it ruptures, it's just salt water in your body. No big deal. And I remember thinking the same thing. But of course, when you go in to talk to your doctors, they'll tell you that that's a less natural look now, and that the gummy bear silicone implants were the ones that had come on the market and were the more natural, but they were what's called a cohesive gel. And so it's filled with a thicker gel that holds its shape, even if the shell breaks. So what I was told when I got them was that, well, if it breaks, it's still safe because it won't leak into your body. And that was one of the issues with the silicone.
So it's not a liquid silicone, it's like a jelly firm.
Yeah, it's like, I remember they said, think of a gummy bear. And if you
Yeah.
cut it, it doesn't ooze.
Yeah.
You know, it's like still intact. And
Okay.
that's how they market or, you know, talk to you about the cohesive gel. The silicone gel is pre-filled with a gel, and those are still put in, could leach into your body and leak, where it's not kind of this structured, harder substance. So the structured saline has more of an internal support structure. So it was meant to be, from what I understand from my research, a more natural feel, because I know from regular saline, it was like this round thing that was kind of in your body. So it was a bit more obvious that it was some kind of implant. And so I guess probably the structured saline was kind of the next iteration where they put more stuff into it so it would feel natural, but it was still saline. But what is all that other stuff? And that's the point, is like there's still a capsule around it. So it's not just salt water and nothing. And so it's all the capsular material. And then your body actually creates its own capsule to kind of wall off the implant from creating this harsh environment in our body. That's our body being really intelligent and trying to protect us. But all of that material can also at some point get infected and have issues as well. So it's, I feel like, so multi-layered in terms of you've got this material, even if it's salt water, you know, it's still a foreign substance that is coming into your body with what it's made out of. So they talk about toxic heavy metals is a big thing, like there being metals in the material, which we all know. We get tested for lead poisoning and all these other metals. We care about lead paint and asbestos and all these things, yet, you know, we're putting these in our body. And I'm not saying there's asbestos or lead, but there's heavy metals in the implants for sure. That's a big thing. It's like almost like heavy metal poisoning.
Potentially microplastics and all sorts of stuff that we might not even have discovered yet that's harmful to us.
Yeah, probably PFAs or something, you know, I can't imagine, because we know they last a long time. And I've got to think if you take out one of these implants and throw it in a landfill, it'll probably be there until like the end of time. So scarily.
Yeah, and that's what we're told, right? The risk is low. So what are the symptoms of BII?
So there is an insane list of symptoms. And I think because of what we already talked about, where it can trigger all these autoimmune responses, they all get put into this list, because like chronic fatigue and those types of things, because I think it is our body's way of whatever might be dormant coming to the surface. But really common ones are anxiety and depression, which is interesting, fatigue, joint pain, brain fog, rashes, muscle pain, weakness, dry eyes, hair loss. And yeah, that's just a few. I mean, I've seen some women that, you know, even just nausea, like right away after they got implants and didn't go away, like couldn't eat, dry mouth. Certainly gastro issues are really common for sure. Just so many things. Also, one thing that's not talked about is actually breathing issues in women who do have large implants. Breathing is definitely a thing where they didn't realize how much their breathing was restricted, the ability to take a really deep breath. And I hadn't really thought about it until I had seen a post about breath. And then I kind of took a deep breath and realized that I had trouble doing like box breathing. I would struggle with box breathing, like doing fours, breathing in for 4, holding for 4, letting out, and then hold it, and then breathing in again. And I realized how much better my breathing was when I got them out. And I didn't have these heavy, huge things. But if you think about you're laying down, you've got heavy weight, where some women, their implants, like you have to use 2 hands to hold one, sitting on your chest, and you're sleeping at night. And it's just that constant pressure on your chest cavity. And like, I don't know, just again, not something you think about of breath, but we literally can't live without it. And so think if it's that constant shallow breath. Yeah.
But
so women feeling like they can't breathe.
Yeah, because we want to acknowledge there's lots of different reasons why people consider getting breast implants, but perhaps you don't think through all of the impacts because you're so focused on the change in your appearance, how you're going to look, and the look's going to make you feel better. But,
Yep.
you know, before you got them, had you been thinking about how that might impact your ability to breathe? You know, we're obviously not
For
told
sure
that
not.
by the doctors.
Yeah, for sure not. There's so many things I wish I knew, but no, breathing was definitely not on the radar. And I can see these women posting and saying just the ability to take a much deeper breath and realize how much restriction there was in their chest cavity is just, yeah, kind of crazy. And crazy we don't think about it.
Yeah, that we're not told that basic kind of thing. It must feel so freeing as well. You know, you're dealing with the change in appearance, but you get to have a deep, like a truly deep breath. So let's talk about your personal symptoms. What were they?
So it's interesting. For a while, I kind of was being told everything was like lumped into menopause and premenopause. So for me, when I was having tremendous hot flashes and other things going on, you know, it was like, oh, it's menopause. It's like your body changing. And I think a lot of people fall into that category where they're just told, oh, it's got to be menopause. But for me, I definitely had inflammation in my body. So the joint pain for sure. And it's some of these things you don't realize until you're on the other side and you're like, oh my gosh, that went away. Even dry eyes, my face was a lot puffier. I definitely had fatigue for sure. My gut and like gastro issues have significantly improved since getting them out. So obviously that was an issue for me. Definitely hormones, like hormones being wacky was a thing for me for sure. And that's something that I've heard lots of women talk about. Like as soon as you get the implants in, I want to say it's your testosterone like tanks, which is interesting. Also, you know, one of the symptoms is going through early menopause. That is something that is talked about a lot. And I am fully through menopause. I'm 48 and I'm like 2 years plus past, you know, having any type of menstrual cycle. So it might even be close to 3 years now, which is really early. And you'll hear doctors say if you're going through full menopause, like before 50, there was some type of hormone disruption or whatever. I 100% attribute that to the implants. And so early menopause is really common for women who have breast implants.
That's so interesting.
Yeah. So I definitely feel, you know I was joking with you. I was like, I'm going to be really upset if I get these out and all of a sudden, you know, get a period again. That's going to suck. Like, I've already gone through this. I'm done now at this point.
Yeah, you've gone through that portal. There's no way back in.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, people don't think about that. But I also had, after my second surgery, I ended up with a thyroid mass on my neck. And it wasn't from the surgery. It was kind of a bunch of symptoms, but realized that I had Epstein-Barr that ended up getting released into my body after that second surgery. I ended up with a massive goiter on my neck at one point from getting the biopsy, and basically the Epstein-Barr was unleashed in my body. It was capsulated around my thyroid, which is where your body, it's so intelligent, it's crazy. It was able to put it into kind of a nodule, into a node, and trap the virus there, and then it was released. And then I had to deal with, while I was still recovering from my second surgery, I was dealing with Epstein-Barr. And so tremendous fatigue and just not feeling well. And it was awful. It was really awful. So I think for a lot of women, when you start thinking about these symptoms when they started, they can attribute it to their implants sometimes right away. Like there are posts in this group that talk about within like a week or two, they're sick and these symptoms came on. And for some, you know, you'll see some women where they say, I don't have any symptoms. I'm not feeling anything. And many will come back and say, you know, I want them out because I know that they're not in alignment for me anymore. I feel like I don't need them. I do know that they have chemicals in them, so I just want them out of my body, but I really don't have symptoms. And then come back and post and say, oh my gosh, kind of like me. I didn't know that a lot of these symptoms were because of my implants. Like people have told me that my eyes are a lot brighter. That's something that I know people have remarked about, but people have said to me that my eyes just look clearer. And I had, you know, really dry eyes for a long time. I was using like drops, and unless I have like an allergy issue, I very rarely use them now. So that definitely was something, for whatever reason, was also a symptom for me.
And are there any other changes to your health that have happened since you've had the implants out?
I feel like I'm still discovering. I mean, I'm at the 7-month mark, and sometimes I'll think about something and be like, oh, I don't have that anymore. Interesting. Was that from the implants? Because why would something just go away? So I feel like it's this journey of discovery, but I also feel like my body is still healing. Like it's still resetting. You know, I had them for 15 years. And so I know it's not going to heal overnight. I think I've done a tremendous amount of healing, but I feel like I'm still figuring out or discovering like what other things are healing. And I think I don't, oh, I know, my low blood pressure. That was a thing. I had this mystery low blood pressure that I went to every doctor under the sun that you can imagine, from cardiologists to endocrinologists. I still have to get heart scans because they did find like a minor heart thing, but I did get cleared for that. But they said it's not causing the low blood pressure. And so, yeah, I had this mystery low blood pressure to the point that it would, especially if I drank alcohol, which if you think about it, suppresses your immune system. If I drank alcohol, I would be like on the couch the next day. Like my blood pressure would be, say, like 80/50. Yeah, that was my lowest. But it would cause such symptoms like my head would be pounding. I would be so dizzy. I couldn't function. I would be on the couch. And I realized that alcohol triggered it. But then I stopped drinking and I still had it. So I removed alcohol, and that was definitely a trigger, but it still was happening. And I'd go to the doctors and my blood pressure, they'd be like, oh, you know, is this your normal? And I was like, it kind of is for me now because it wasn't my whole life. I always had this regular, like 110/80 was my blood pressure. I was always right around there. And after, when I think about it, again, like unpacking this in real time, after my second set of implants is probably when all of that started for me, the low blood pressure. And I'd go in and they'd be like, well, as long as it's not causing symptoms, it's okay. And I would say, well, sometimes it does. And I went on this 2-year journey of trying to figure out what was going on. And we never got an answer. But I can tell you my blood pressure is pretty much normal now. I think I've had one bout of low blood pressure since I had them out. Yeah. And it wasn't as bad. It was low and I kind of felt crappy, but it was nothing like what it used to be. And I feel like it's still like my body's re-regulating itself. And like I said, it's still healing for sure.
Yeah. What's really interesting to me is that when we talk about the term breast implant illness and we're thinking about old implants that aren't getting replaced, my first impression was that it's a slow, long-term leak of toxins if you happen to be unlucky enough to have some kind of rupture or something like that they haven't discovered. But it sounds like you said, there's women who have symptoms almost immediately after having surgery, and then others that might develop different or new or additional symptoms over time. So it's not just if something goes wrong with the implant where something leaks and that's what makes you sick. The autoimmune response can happen just by that foreign object being put in your body, right? So it's multi-layered, it sounds like.
Yeah. I mean, forget about, if you have a rupture or a leak, which women talk about, you know, that they go in for their removal and didn't realize that an implant had ruptured or was leaking, like some kind of slow leak. So then you do have that on top of all of the autoimmune and what breast implant illness triggers. Now you also have the toxins of the implant going into your body. So that's like a whole nother issue that then women have to deal with, which is scary. I mean, thank goodness that I did not have that, but a lot do for sure.
Yeah. And so breast implant illness isn't necessarily a rupture or a leak. That might be even on top of that.
Totally separate.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I'm glad we were able to kind of dispel that myth because I think that's important to know that at any time you could have perfectly healthy implants that are making you sick.
Right. And I think a lot of women, you know, I see a lot of times will say, well, I've had them for 25 years and I've had no problems, you know, and I don't think that we can have these in our body and not have problems. I think we just don't know. I think we get to a point of we're in this place of like homeostasis where we've accepted, oh, I can't do these certain things. I'm tired all the time. My hormones are dysregulated. I have IBS and it just is IBS. It has nothing to do with this. And I'm sure if some women looked back at when they first got them and were potentially like vibrant beings and all of a sudden we're like, gosh, I got IBS and I got this and I got that. I got whatever autoimmune condition, fill in the blank. and just thought it was kind of like almost like bad luck, like I just got this thing. And we're told our body is attacking itself, which also is not true. Our body is always working to heal us and help us and is so intelligent. It is not attacking us. It's attacking whatever has come into our body. And we're so misled that way of an autoimmune is like your body's turning on itself. And it's not. That is not what your body is designed to do, is to attack itself. It's truly always trying to heal you. And if you honor that and dig deeper, I promise there's something else going on there. And I just think, for a lot of women, it's kind of heartbreaking when, especially also from a time perspective, these women who have had implants that long, there's no way that those can't be compromised because they have a 10-year shelf life. That they've said that since the beginning.
I think that's something really important to acknowledge, like when you're making the decision of getting implants, because I think there's going to be people who are listening to this that maybe are completely happy with their implants and they're weighing up the risks, taking in this information, being like, well, you know what? I still love the way I look and I feel so much better this way. So I'm not going to go through that process of removing them. It's still really important to have the information you need to make a proactive decision. So something like the need to remove them after their shelf life expires and potentially replace them. Having enough money in case they rupture in the future, if you're unlucky and that happens, to be able to go and have a surgery to remove them. Did you hear stories from women in the communities that unfortunately were going through this but didn't have the funds or the means to actually remedy something like a rupture?
For sure. I'd say, I don't want to say half the posts, but a ton of women talk about they don't have the money, which is really heartbreaking, where they're like, I know these are making me sick. I'm so sick. Many women do get the explant surgery approved by insurance, at least here in the United States. I don't know, other countries, but here in the US, where they do get them removed and insurance pays for them. But from what I could tell with women sharing their journeys, and there's posts and there's, all kinds of resources out there, women are really gracious with sharing, like, here's what I had to do. Here's the documentation. Obviously, every insurance company is different. Every state is going to be different, but it seems like quite an arduous process. And I can only imagine if you're sick and you feel like these are the cause and you want them out, how awful that must be if you can't afford them. And a lot of women, especially, I think that's, one of the things I spoke about in the episode is, feeling the shame of like, oh my gosh, I just spent all this money on getting these implants. And now I'm going to turn around and be like, oops, I made a mistake. And now I'm going to pay sometimes, a lot of times even more, like in my case, it was more to get them removed. And so I think that's a huge hurdle for women to actually having the surgery. And don't get me wrong, I still liked how I looked with the implants. For me, it's still, sometimes I still have to adjust my mentality. I'm grateful every single day to have them out, but I wasn't unhappy with how they looked. So some people do have deformities where they rupture, they can slide down, they can shift, and they could have not had a good surgical experience and they're lopsided or, really uneven. So some women do have not great experiences having their implants, but others, I was like, yeah, mine are great. Like no one ever knew that I had implants. People were always shocked when I said I had implants. I felt like they looked natural for my shape and the size and all of those things. And so I do think, that can be challenging if you feel good about them, thinking about taking them out and thinking like, oh my gosh, how much money am I going to spend? But I also think we're not thinking about that 10-year mark. When you get there, they are meant to be replaced. And I feel like if that was really drilled into us, where we took that seriously, because I was told that, and I thought like, it's 10 years from now, like who knows where I'll be? Like I had little kids and I thought now I have to go in for this elective surgery and like I could die. And I have little kids and like people die every day from surgery and anesthesia and having reactions to things and get infections and all those things. And, that's scary to me, is like that I know I'm putting myself in a place where I have to have this surgery again in 10 years and really every 10 years because they're supposed to be replaced. Otherwise you do risk leakage and other problems.
Degradation and whatever comes
They're not meant to last. Yeah. Well, I mean, they're not meant to, I think they're meant to last. Like I said, I think if you throw them in a landfill, we'll see them in 100 years. they're not meant to last in our bodies with how we are operating every day and think there's like pressure. And, you hear of people getting hit too hard in the chest and the implant ruptures, or surfing and you fall and something ruptures, so they're not infallible for sure.
I want to go back to something that we just touched on, that we think of these kinds of cosmetic procedures as being a lot to do with self-confidence, even vanity. But for some people, this is a really important surgery. Like if you're going through cancer, or you might be going through a preventative surgery to have your natural breasts removed. And it's really hard to be like, well, these things are bad for you, so you shouldn't do it, when sometimes it's not even your choice to have them removed. Or you might be going through or planning to go through a gender affirming surgery, and that you want breasts to feel whole, but you have to consider the risks and dangers of that when we're talking about breast implants. So I just wanted to talk to you about, the different reasons around why people consider this, but also for those people who want to go through with this process and are gathering knowledge about that, are there safe implants or safer implants than others? I mean, we talked about like saline versus the gummy bears, but even alternative options to implants. So if you're someone who's in one of those groups, what do you do?
Yeah. And obviously I can't speak from this place of having those experiences. Like I have a lot of empathy, a tremendous amount of empathy for women who go through cancer and they have no choice. And now not only are their breasts removed, they might have concave, like concave in their chest, their nipples are gone. I can only imagine, truly only imagine what that might be like. Or you are going through gender reassignment where you are becoming a woman. And so feeling like, well, that's my only option. And obviously we're not medical professionals, not pretending to be. From what I see, it's not offered a lot to be able to do fat transfers. And so that's something that my doctor does now for women. You're able to have a fat transfer where they do liposuction on different areas, usually like hips and buttocks and other thighs. They take that fat and transfer it, but you do need a skilled surgeon to do that, because I've seen a lot of things where people were a bit disfigured because it wasn't done well. It didn't have good results, but it's also, you're moving fat from one part of your body to another. So I know it's not like an implant where it's just going to have this consistent look of like, okay, it's going to be round and squishy and all these things. It's fat, so it settles and it can move and all of those things. So I know it's not a one-to-one comparison to an implant. And I do know that there's flap reconstruction that uses your body's tissue to create some type of breast. I think they talk about flap reconstruction, fat transfers that you can get like up to a cup size, which a lot of women are going like 4, 5 cup sizes bigger. And so obviously you're not going to be able to get that look if you feel like that's what it is you need. And I feel like that's where we need to come back to, how are we seeing ourselves and how much importance are we placing on this for ourselves and thinking about that. But I can understand if you're born into a male body and feel like, female is where I want to be, that would be a really big part of your journey, having breasts and figuring that out. But from what I can see, those are kind of the other options. There's no other safe implant because there's nothing that's truly just made of our body's material that can go in there. Because if you think about it, it's got to be in some type of shape. There's got to be some kind of capsule, which is going to be man-made materials, which will never be natural or identical to our own body substances, at least at this point. Who knows? Maybe that'll change.
And then the message here is do your research, ask about different options. Again, we're not wanting to cast judgment here. I definitely accept that people listening might still want to go through that process. We just want to give you as much information as possible to make an informed decision. And I think that leads me to my next question for you, Heather. Is there anything you wish you knew before you got your implants, either from your own research or that you were told by your doctors or other people you were asking for advice, that can help empower other people who are going through this process make the very best decision for them?
For sure. Yeah, I have a little list because when I think about this, I think about myself and being this like 30-year-old. If I had heard this list, would it really have changed my mind? And I don't know. I think I had at the time made up my mind of like, this is the thing that's going to make me feel more confident. Could you have swayed me? I'm not sure. I do remember them saying, my doctor telling me, hey, yeah, these have like a 10-year shelf life. Did we go into what that actually meant of, hey, you're going to have surgery? Think about where you might be in your life in 10 years. What disruption might that cause? Those kinds of things. Of course, it was very much a surface level conversation. But actually, when you think about severing and cutting into your pectoral muscles to put the implants under the muscle, so there are differences in that, which we didn't talk about, but you can get implants over the chest muscle or under. And so mine went under. The doctor, most of the time, from what I've heard of people I know who have had them, get them under because they always tell you it looks more natural. It's going to look more natural. So they cut your muscle, kind of create a pocket and shove the implant under your chest muscle. And so it's under the muscle. It's a much longer recovery than when they put it on top. So a lot of times athletes that you see that have implants that sometimes might look not as natural. It might not be because they have a different type of implant. Like they could still have the gummy bear, which is the more natural one, allegedly. But it could be that they put it on top of the muscle because it's a quicker recovery. That muscle doesn't have to repair over time. But the fact that, thinking about that of like, they're going to sever your muscle, it is going to lead to potential weakness over time of your muscles, of restricting, what you might be able to do with your upper body, I think is like, just, I care now. I cared when I thought about it and I was like, oh my gosh, we really didn't talk about this. So that was something.
So there's like a literal injury to your muscle and there's going to be a longer recovery time. There's also going to be, I imagine, scar tissue that forms, which has its own complications sometimes. So it's not just like, oh, they could open your skin and pop them in and you're all good. It's serious, right?
It's serious. Yeah. And when I talked about in my reconstruction, my explant, she sewed up all those chest muscles. When she took them out, then she repairs all of the muscles.
Because they're not sewn back together when you have the implant surgery, right?
Right. They're not repairing them. Yeah. It's like cut and then they put it in and I guess probably, I don't know if they sew up something to like keep it in place. But yeah, if you think it's like separated, so now your chest muscle is not attached to the chest wall because the implant's in between. And so then when you have them removed, and I think that's really important for women too, is to find a surgeon that's going to do all that repair, not only clean out the whole capsule and all the material, get everything out, because you can still have the symptoms of the breast implant illness. If any part of the capsule that's surrounding the implant, any material is still in there, you'll still have symptoms. Because if you think about it, if it's causing the symptoms, if there's any material left, it's still going to happen, even though the implants might be out. So it's really important to make sure you have a surgeon who's going to take all the material out. And then also, I think if you have it under the muscle, repair that muscle so you're really back to where you were prior to surgery.
Yeah, that's so important.
So I think, like I said, the clear understanding that you're going to have surgery in 10 years to replace them. So not only is it time, you're going to have surgery. So think about job. You have to take off time. You have to have people to support you. But you have to have the money to pay for more surgeries. And if you're getting these like in your 20s, you could have like 5 or 6 surgeries. And think as you get older, it's much riskier as you age to have to go back under to get implants replaced and properly do it, and then have a surgeon that'll do it that you trust, and an ability to lift things, the risks of surgeries, and then also the damage to nerves. So I actually talked to my doctor a little bit about that because I knew my friend who had implants at the time had some damage to her nerves. And so I said, like, I'm a little concerned. And he was like, oh, that rarely happens. And again, really blew it off. And as I said, I wasn't able to breastfeed either one of my children because I had severe nerve damage on my left side. And it prohibited me from doing that. It was worse than I think my labor, the pain of trying to breastfeed because of my nerve damage. And I didn't realize how bad it was until, my surgeon went in to take the implants out and found that there was this massive neuroma from my nerve that had been severed during my implant surgery, the first one. And she was able to repair that for me. And I no longer have pain, but that caused me pain for years.
And that's such an obvious symptom that is clearly linked to your surgery.
Yeah. 100%, because I had asked my doctor about it when I got my implants swapped out 5 years ago. And I said, if you see something in there, can you just try and do something with it? And granted, it wasn't pain that I was feeling all the time, but it was enough, the sensitivity and touching it and everything. Like I couldn't even, in the shower for probably a year plus, I had pain, like just the water hitting my left breast from the nerve damage. And he told me he saw nothing. And my surgeon, when she went in there, I was like, I know my doctor said that they didn't see anything. She was like, it was very obvious. There was a pea-sized neuroma where the nerve had been severed. So my surgeon, who was the same surgeon who did my first surgery, wasn't going to tell me. And honestly, I would have been okay if he didn't tell me and was like, I didn't see anything, but he fixed it anyway, which is they bury it in your breast tissue so it can't touch things and be irritated. I would have been okay with that, but he didn't even do that for me. Which I feel a big sense of betrayal when I learned that of, he could have fixed this for me, but almost didn't value my pain and my experience to do that for me, which, was really heartbreaking. And so I think for women out there that are thinking about the surgery, I think a lot of young people are like, oh, who cares? Like breastfeeding. You care when you're pregnant and the ability to feed your child and some women decide not to do that, and that's okay. And I had to make peace with that. But I feel like that option was taken away from me. And lots of women get implants and they do not have this issue. So I don't want to say it's something that's going to happen. But for me, that was my experience. It's, I know a lot of women who have that experience and can't breastfeed because of other issues. So I think it would have been a potential consideration for me. And then also like the potential deformity from surgery, stretched skin. Some women have, like I said, terrible experiences. They can slide down, which is why they started making what are called textured implants at one point so that they wouldn't move. They thought the texture would, I guess, almost like grip into your tissue and whatnot. But unfortunately, they found that textured implants have a very high rate of leading to cancer. And so I think they haven't been banned, but most surgeons, from what I understand, don't use them anymore because there is such a high rate of cancer in women who get implants that have textured implants. But that's certainly, if you have textured implants, I would definitely talk to a doctor because I know there's a pretty high link in incidence of cancer with textured implants. But also, back pain, neck pain, the breath, like I said, the weight on the chest. I think women a lot of times don't think through that size. And because they are pressured, as we talked about before, to get larger and larger implants, not thinking about the weight on your chest all the time and carrying that weight and having it weighing on you. So you have to get, bigger bras, and then it's causing shoulder pain and neck pain and so many small things that I think we're not thinking about that literally affect our everyday life, how we show up. I mean, if you have chronic pain, if anyone's had any type of chronic pain, even if it's neck pain or back pain caused from something that we choose to add on to our body, is it worth it? Only you can decide that if you're looking at this. But I think just going through all of these things is really important to think about those considerations when you're thinking about getting implants.
And like you said, back then you might have known that in more detail and still made that decision. But I think at least, having this information, you're empowered to make that decision, and also perhaps a bit more prepared for what happens in 10 years' time, or having that contingency fund in case something goes wrong before that. So, I think that's super powerful to share what you wish you had have known then.
Yeah. And also the other thing that you and I talked about is I do feel really strongly that there should be some type of psychological support before you decide to get the implants, where you can talk through these risks and you can talk through options and just make sure that you're really understanding it. Because I don't know if at the time telling me these things, because I know, like I said, the 10-year thing, I was kind of like, oh, it's 10 years from now, I'll deal with it then. That was my mindset. If you sat down with someone to really think about, well, in 10 years, like, do you see yourself with a family? What will that be like if you have children, having to get another surgery and, potential risks of that and time away, and you can't pick up your kids for 6 weeks. And do you have a support system around you? Those kinds of things. So I just think if there was a mandatory, almost like counseling that you had to go through and really talk about these things, I think women would realize, like, do I really want to do this to my body and take this on? And then what are the reasons why I'm doing this? And maybe sitting with that for a little bit. And that's hard work. Like, I feel like, not that surgery is easy, and it's certainly not an easy alternative, but it can be easier to doing this hard work of, why do I feel this way about myself? Why do I feel like I have to look like these other people? Why do I feel like having bigger breasts are going to change my life or affect my life, in doing some of that deeper work, which I certainly was not in a place at, when I had them to do them. But looking back, I kind of wish I was.
Yeah, it's really interesting to hear you reflect on, because I feel like, again, myself not having gone through these thought processes around my breasts, but some people may have the surgery and they do feel how they hope and expect to feel beforehand. Other people might have deeper holes they're trying to fill, and they go through this or another cosmetic procedure and find that they still feel the same way. And so I think that psychological or emotional support would probably be really helpful, just to scratch the surface a little bit. And perhaps there's other stuff that you can work on before you make that decision.
For sure. I think we just have to give ourselves all the tools and knowledge. And I see women in the groups that I've referenced, many times, say, tell me why I'm still considering getting implants. I've read some posts like, tell me why I shouldn't. And I mean, you'll see 200 comments come on with all these stories. And here's a list of 20 symptoms I had. And here's what happened with this. And it's there. And obviously, if then someone still makes that decision, then, they certainly can, and no judgment on that. And I do, again, have a lot of empathy if, you don't have the opportunity, you have trauma from, you've been disfigured in an accident, or something else happened to you, you are going through sex reassignment. I have a lot of empathy and compassion, because I feel like there's going to feel that piece that we're told in society is going to be missing if you don't have breasts to make you whole and feel like you're in a female body. And so I think both of us just want to make sure people feel there's no judgment coming from us. And if anything, sending a lot of love to people who feel that. And it's okay if that's part of your journey. I wanted to make sure I'm sharing my experience. We're not medical professionals. This is solely my experience and my research. And I just feel like it's really important to share with people so they can be informed and make informed decisions.
Yeah. And on that note, you've talked a lot about the communities you were a part of. So do you have any resources you can share with the listeners who do want to learn more, want to connect with people, to have their questions answered, or to have some support if they're going through a similar journey?
Yeah. We'll post the Facebook group. You do have to apply for a lot of these Facebook groups. Not that it's complicated or hard to get into them. They ask you to answer a couple of questions, but I found these forums that were through Facebook on breast implant illness. There's one woman, it's Breast Implant Illness by Carrie, where she is, I think, like 6 or 7 years post-implant maybe. And she's helping put a lot of research out there. She shares a tremendous amount. And so to me, those groups were just invaluable, of other women sharing their experiences and stories. And you have to use your own discernment, just like with anything. Discernment is key. You'll certainly have people who are attention seeking and doing all these things. But when you look at the hundreds of comments on posts about symptoms, and for the most part, there are women truly trying to help other women heal and have knowledge. I know my doctor is doing a lot of research. I know there's been formal medical research presented on breast implant illness. And there's been some, I want to say, like medical hearings on breast implant illness. It's still not a recognized medical diagnosis in the medical world right now, but there are doctors for sure that you can seek out, surgeons that will 100% believe and will support you. And I think that's really important, that you have a surgeon that also is understanding and caring and believes that this is something real. Because I do see women in some of these groups who also will say that they talked to their doctor about who was doing the explant, that some will do explants, but not because of breast implant illness. They're just like, okay, if you want to take them out, you had a bad result from your surgery, you want them out, fine. But they don't necessarily believe that breast implant illness is a true medical condition. For me, I wouldn't want to work with a doctor like that if I feel like I have symptoms. So we'll share the links and resources there that I found really helpful, but certainly we're also empowered. We have so much information at our fingertips. You're just going to have to use discernment, but I'm sure there's a lot more information. We'll also post the couple of podcasts that I found where women share their experiences with their Explant. Mel Robbins' story was really powerful and kind of life-changing for me because it helped me find my surgeon, but also the Heal with Kelly podcast. She has her Explant story where she shared her experience as well. So there's a lot of resources out there.
Yeah, that's really, really helpful. And do you think it's also worth finding communities of support to research doctors as well?
1,000%. So I also used both podcasts, which, Natalie and I were talking about before this conversation, kind of what is the responsibility of people who are bringing medical professionals onto podcasts to vet them, or almost, I would say, at least have a disclaimer that if you haven't used this individual, but you're kind of giving them a platform to speak and share their methodology, how they're approaching something, you have to use discernment for sure. Because I had an experience where because of a podcast, was ready and willing to choose my doctor based on that, which in the end, I ended up, ironically, from another podcast, Mel Robbins, as I told the story, finding my doctor. But I almost was ready to just plow head in without a lot of discernment and looking at multiple doctors. So I do think that's really important to talk to a couple, make sure they resonate with you, that you feel like they're seeing you, that they're hearing you. And I know for me with my surgeon, I have never felt so seen and heard in my life and supported. And so that was really important. But I didn't just do a Google search. People ask for recommendations, and you'll see a lot of the same doctors coming up in the community posts. So if you look for posts, you can certainly post yourself. I did, asking for differences in different doctors. And obviously budgets are a concern too. People need to find some close to home where they can't afford to travel and stay over and all of that. So I do feel like community groups are very powerful. Most women that are in there or people are really looking to just help and support one another. And so I think it's really powerful, and it's how women have always, I think, tried to support each other in our culture. And we've, kind of been pitted against each other. And this is one way that I feel women just are really empowering one another to heal themselves and understand, like, we're not crazy. We might be told that we're crazy, but we're not crazy. And these things are real. BII is real. And there are women who are willing to get on the phone with you. One woman got on the phone with me to talk about her situation. And it was just, it renewed my spirit for community in a different way, with women helping women, especially in this plastic surgery kind of world. So I think it's incredibly important.
Yeah, it just sounds like the most natural and beautiful remedy to something that is perhaps hurting women, that turning us against each other and kind of subverting our sisterhood. So I think that's a beautiful note to end on. So I want to say thank you, Heather, for sharing all this information with me and the audience. And if you've gotten through this episode and you haven't listened to part 1, go and listen. It's a really beautiful and empowering share, and a really intimate window into Heather's experience going through the implant and explant journey. So I want to say thank you for sharing that with us, with all of us, Heather. I know it's going to help so many people. And before we close out this episode and this special series, is there anything else that you'd like to share? Any final messages?
Well, thank you for helping me do this episode. I know you were really wanted to be so intentional and honor my experience and make sure that we're sharing both my experience, but also something that can be broadly really applied to other women, because I think this is such an important topic that no one's really talking about in the mainstream. We're seeing it come up, but I think this was really important. So thank you for honoring that part of my journey. But I think for women who are thinking about this, I think I would say be discerning, do research, talk to people, get involved in some groups, make sure that you have support. And it might mean it's not in your direct home. I was very lucky and blessed to have so many people supporting me on this journey. And you might be surprised where support could come from, but just find some sense of community to support yourself if you're going to go through this, because it's a whole nother journey. And I think that's really important. And I hope this might be part of that first step. But if someone does have questions, just reach out. I am here. I know that this is part of what I'm meant to share with people who have gone through this, or are thinking about this. So please reach out. But I do think that's important to have some support and do your research and make sure that you're ready for this either way, whether it's getting implants or taking them out. And I also think just honor yourself and your body and listen to yourself and know you're not crazy. You're not crazy, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise, because you're not. We know our body's the best and they are talking to us all the time. And so if you're listening to that and honor yourself and your experience, and don't let anyone gaslight you or tell you you're not valued or that what you're feeling, your experience is not real, because it is. So just know you're believed and we believe you, and know that you're still loved no matter what you decide.
That's beautifully put and such a powerful message to leave this on. If you would like to connect with Heather, then drop us a line at hello@becomingspiritual.me. I also encourage you to check out our website, becomingspiritual.me. If you head over to the resources page, you'll be able to find all of the links to podcasts, to communities, things that we've discussed today. That'll all be there on the resources page. So also check the show notes. So thank you so much for listening. We really appreciate you coming on this journey with us. And until next time,
bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for taking time out of your precious day to listen to our podcast. If this episode resonated with you, we would love for you to share it with someone you love. That would mean the world to us. Also, if you feel called, please follow our show so you will know when a new episode drops. If you want to go one step further, you can even rate this episode, as it allows our podcast to find its way to others. Lastly, we've done our best to share resources that you might find helpful in the show notes, whether that's a book recommendation or a website we referenced during the episode, a free resource, or more information on a guest who took their time to speak with us and share their knowledge. We would love for you to support their work too. You can find more information on our podcast website at becomingspiritual.me. We love you and can't wait for you to hear the next episode. Until then, know you have a place where you are welcome and you are loved. Welcome home.